Buried below the streets of Paris, the catacombs house the bones of over 6 million people and have become one of the eeriest places in Paris. Many legends now surround this ossuary, and each year more and more people visit the darker side of the City of Light. Here are some bone-chilling Paris catacomb legends and myths. Cataphiles. The definition is people who study and explore the Paris catacombs regularly. In the early 1990s, a group of cataphiles was walking through the dark chambers of the ossuary when they found a video camera on the ground. The camera still had footage on it. As they watched, they heard disturbing noises from the video. They could tell the man holding the camera was lost and had no idea how to escape. The more they watched, the more it became clear. The man was going mad in the underground network of tunnels. The video ends abruptly with the man dropping his camera to the ground. To this day, no one knows who he was or if he ever managed to get out alive. Many believe that the movie As Above, So Below was inspired by this tragedy. Possibly linked to the video camera story above, a famous Paris catacombs legend has it that something terrifying happens in the burial site after midnight. Keep your wits about you inside the Paris catacombs after midnight, according to this legend. That's when the walls begin to speak. It is said disembodied voices will try to persuade you to venture even deeper into the catacombs until you can't find your way out again. Is it legal to go into the catacombs of Paris? Yes and no. Long before the catacombs became commercialized, electricity lit and properly mapped, people wandered down there to explore these creepy places freely. Eventually, the catacombs were partly condoned off, with only a portion now available to visit. Some people insist on going beyond these permitted areas. However, the taste of the forbidden is never far away. The Cataphiles of Paris. There are many Paris catacomb stories, but only a small portion of the tunnels open to the public. It is inevitable that adventurers will want to explore the rest and uncover the hidden stories. Those who kept coming back are called cataphiles, passionate visitors of the forbidden underground, owners of the Parisian netherworld. People have been visiting the tunnels for centuries, but wandering off without a guide or off the official paths has been illegal since 1955. Many of these cataphiles became particularly active during the May 1968 street revolts, when students used the catacombs to circumvent police barricades. By the 1980s, being a cataphile was often a lifestyle choice, with manholes almost turning into revolving doors in some underground chambers so crowded the party music clashed with that of the neighboring tunnels. Enough was enough, and authorities eventually sealed off most of the entrances. The number of cataphiles dwindled, and only the most passionate remained. That being said, the arrival of COVID-19 had an unexpected effect on the catacombs. It encouraged illegal gatherings, where young people could get together away from the prying eyes, and from curfews. Now, however, police are back in the full force in making sure no one wanders off into the main paths. There is no question security is an issue in the catacombs. The possibility of getting lost exists, of course, and there is no phone signal down there. But that's not all. Rats, and of course there are underground rats and quarry diseases. There are other possible dangers. The tunnels could flood. Some are already half full of water, or could cave in. Because not all the tunnels have been reinforced, and you can't assume all cataphiles are friendly. In fact, some are downright sinister, and mugging underground are not uncommon. To many cataphiles, tourists who simply want to experience the forbidden areas of the catacombs as a bucket list item are cause for disdain. But that doesn't mean you won't find someone to guide you. Since this is a legal endeavor, cataphiles willing to guide don't advertise. Fines have become stiflers, and motion sensors make a visit riskier. So as a cataphile, might not necessarily be overjoyed to have some stranger tagging along. You'll have to build a relationship first. They're guarded about their underground travels, and a simple request for a guide might be ignored. Plus, they don't know you. You could be a serial killer. And who wants that kind of company deep underground, where not even text messages reach? That said, there are plenty of sites dedicated to exploring the catacombs, but they're all in French, so if you do speak the language, you'll probably find someone if you try. You can browse through the Twitter cataphiles hashtags. There are forums where you can talk to real cataphiles and, who knows, maybe convince one to take you down. I will not share the listings of these as I want to keep this private, so you will have to adventure on your own and take the risks into your own. I will advise you that it is illegal. The Paris Catacombs are not the only crypts and catacombs in France. There is plenty underneath many churches. But this is by far the largest of the catacombs. Here's a brief timeline of the catacombs in Paris history. 53 million years ago, Paris is a swamp. 47 million years ago, the city began to take shape with rivers and banks. 1st century CE, first open-air limestone pits. 14th century, first underground quarries. 1774, serious cave-in, 300 meters of the Paris tunnel system collapsed. 1776, Louis XIV bans mining under Paris. 1777, creation of General Inspectorate of Quarries. 1780, closure of Saints Innocent Cemetery. 1786, municipal ossuary opens in former tomb l'ossuary quarry. 1787 to 1814, more transfer of bones from local Paris cemeteries. 1809, ossuary opens up to the public. 1860, last bones brought in after being uncovered during Haussmann's 18th century overhaul of Paris. 2002, catacombs become part of the Musée Carnavalet, history of Paris. 2017 to 2019, new entrance and exit inaugurated. The first bones under Paris were moved in April 1786, and more would be added over time. As other cemeteries filled up, by 1814, when the limestone quarries finally closed, the miles of tunnels under Paris would become home to more than 6 million souls. They came to be known as the catacombs, in reference to the underground necropolis in Rome. Although in Paris, they were ossuaries rather than burial places. Eventually, excavations during the 1960s would yield even more remains, which would also find their way here. The Paris catacombs were opened to the public on July 1st, 1809, with some great fanfare, creating a stir among the cultured who visited. The glitterati included such contemporary illuminants as Napoleon III, an emperor of Austria. The section now open to the public is called the Ossuary of Denfert, Rocciero. Across the street from the metro station of the same name, Denfert Rocciero, by the way, was a military leader who led the heroic resistance in the city of Belfort in 1871 during the Franco-Prussian War. No question, the haunted catacombs of Paris are one of the more unusual places to visit. In a journey with a corkscrew stairway that plunges you 20 meters underground, there's no avoiding this. There are no elevators. After looking around a well-lit room with information and displays, the hush begins. A pseudo-grand entrance leads you into the catacombs with these words, "Stop," in the Empire of Death. Not discouraging, but not quite welcoming either. They're not called the haunted catacombs of Paris for nothing. Know that you'll be walking through lengthy dark tunnels of humid earth for quite a while before reaching the actual ossuary. So claustrophobics should refrain, as should those who have difficulty breathing. As you advance, any noise will become more muffled and muted, enveloping you in the silence of earth beneath. The path forward is relatively well marked, but don't wander off because there is no phone signal down there, and you might get lost. One of the favorite urban legends concerns a certain Philibert Aspère, who wandered into the depths of 1793 but never found this way out. You can read more about him, and I will discuss his next. story very shortly. You'll see plenty of astonishing things built up into unusual shapes and structures, signed the names and streets above, small rooms with vaults. Rather than the grim and gory scenes you might expect, the bones have been positioned to please in an artistic decision made long ago by the then General Inspector of the Quarries, Louis-Étienne Ricard de Deux. He set up the bones as museum pieces with speculate architecture, structures such as Doric columns, commemorative plaques, altars, and unusually shaped structures, many of which are considered works of art. Had you been at work today, some of the more whimsical constructions would not have been considered. While most of these are the seed of makeup of bones, there are several unexpected sculptures you might see as you're wandering through the tunnels. They're also mostly carved in the late 18th century, between 1777 and 1782, and honed by a certain Decour, a quarry worker with the General Inspectorate. Former Army veteran, he had fought with the liberation from the English of Managora and the Balearic Islands and was imprisoned at Port Mahon, the island's capital. While working in the quarry, he discovered a cavern that he had opened after a rockfall. At lunchtime, while his colleagues returned above ground for lunch, he would rather enter his cavern and chip away at the rock. For 5 straight years, he fashioned buildings underground that reminded him of those in Mahon. Sadly, some of the wall sculptures are damaged during the French Revolution, which would break out shortly after his death and, in later years, by nature and people, although much has been restored. These additional caverns aren't always open to the public, although they do allow some visits and special occasions. The Ghost of Philibert Aspère. During the French Revolution, a man named Philibert Aspère was a doorman at the Val de Grâce Hospital. On a mission to fetch a certain liqueur from a cellar, Philibert accidentally ended up entering the Paris Catacombs by accident. Walking around the pitch-black catacombs alone, with just a single candle, Philibert became lost and confused. Many believe he may have been intoxicated at the time. Ultimately, Philibert's candle went out and everything burned to black, making it impossible for him to escape the profound darkness of the catacombs. His body was only found 11 years later by a group of cataphiles. They identified him by the hospital key ring hanging from his belt. Aspère is buried in the catacombs, in the exact place where he died, with a tombstone describing his death. Cataphiles and catacombs tourists and folklorists say that every November 3rd, Philibert's ghost haunts the labyrinth of the catacombs. The secret hideouts inside of the Paris Catacombs. In 2004, a group of police officers were exploring a part of the Paris Catacombs restricted from public access, when they uncovered some very strange things. First, they found a PA system playing pre-recorded guard dog barking. Then they found 3,000 square feet of galleries, wired for phones using pirated electricity. The officers also found a bar, living area, workshop, lounge, and even a cinema with room to seat 220 people. Shockingly, the cinema seats had been carved into the same stone of the catacombs. The creepiest part of all, though, was that they were discovered on cameras on the ceilings recording them. A few days later, the police squad went back to the area with a larger team to investigate further. However, everything they discovered from the phone lines in the Paris Catacombs cinema had vanished. The only thing that remained was a note that read, "Ne cherchez pas, don't search." Paris Catacombs does offer tours with secret rooms and privileged access. The Paris Catacombs are unlike most attractions you can visit, since it's an underground burial ground with 6 million skeletons adorning the walls. Learn the deep history here. They do have English-speaking guides, and it is worth an experience of a lifetime. I highly recommend. Another interesting part of the catacombs is the below level underwater. I've yet to find any footage or stories of people who have scuba dived to check out this underwater cavern, but I would imagine it is quite dangerous, as is most of the catacombs to this day. Lots of police officers roam, looking to bust people getting into the closed-off areas of the Paris Catacombs. Punk bands even have festivals down there, or did at the time, and you can find footage of that online. It looks amazing. I'll be back with more Paris Catacombs episodes in the future. Just wanted to also send another thank you to thetourguide.com. Next episodes will go over more in-depth history, as well as true accounts from someone who has walked most of the Paris Catacombs herself. Her story is quite magnificent. Thank you again for joining me in the darkness, mon ami. Je m'appelle Ryan Mckern. And much like maybe my own bones lying in the Paris Catacombs, deep within the cinema, till we meet again, au revoir.